My name is Olivier Pickard. I'm the Vice Chair of the NPA. We are in Nottingham tonight, streaming live, and we've also got some contractors as well as board members in the room with me. I'm not going to go around and introduce everyone, but I will mention that Nick, our NPA chair, is online. Hopefully you can see him. I can. He will be chipping into the conversation a little bit later. So evenings like this don't happen on their own. We are, if the buzzer functions, it doesn't, but that's okay. Next slide, please. It's not working. Never mind. I'll turn it back off and on, like a computer. There we go. That's going to work now. There we go. So evenings like this don't happen on their own. We're fortunate enough to have 3 sponsors tonight, and I'm going to give them the first few words. And then we'll move on to 2 speakers. One that everybody will hear about or hear from, and that's Gareth Jones, our Head of Corporate Affairs at the NPA. He's going to take us through the deal, the independent economic review, and try and pick things out and hopefully answer some questions that you might have. People online, please ask your questions in the chat. People in the room will just put their hands up when he gets to it. If there is a lot of questions, we will try and take your questions offline and answer them if it takes too long. We'll try and do a question in the room and a question online. Hopefully everybody gets something out of it. And then after we've heard from Gareth, we'll say goodbye to our people on the screen, and we'll have a little session on private services in the room here. And for those who wanted to hear it, the next time you would have to travel to Nottingham. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring our sponsors, starting with Alliance Healthcare. Ben, if you want to come through, please. And I think, Ben, you have to come about here so the microphone works.
Hello everyone, I'm Ben from Alliance Healthcare. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour of Alliance Healthcare and some of the services we provide. I'm going to presume at this point, most people know who Alliance Healthcare are, if you work in pharmacy. But to give a quick overview, we're one of the leading pharmaceutical wholesalers. We have many, many vans going out there every day. Thank you. Many, many vans going out there every day, delivering medicines to pharmacy twice a day. Our main purpose is to create healthier futures, and one of the ways we try to do that is to support community pharmacy. And some services I'm going to take you through quickly, hopefully do that. The first is NWAS. NWAS is Alliance Healthcare's surgical arm. We have 13,500 items that are stocked in our warehouse in Leigh. The main benefit of using NWAS is not only do they have 30 years of experience, but many of those items are available next day with your normal Alliance delivery as a single. So that I've seen many, many surgical dressing cupboards of doom in pharmacy where split packs have just been sat. You know, hopefully using NWAS can alleviate that stock pressure that you've got there. Next, we have Switch. Switch is our order management system. Again, it's designed to help pharmacy be more efficient with their buying. Switch itself, you can set custom buying rules tailored to suit your business needs. You can utilize a warehouse and bulk purchasing feature, and it scans price and availability of multiple wholesalers and has it all in one place for you. And the last, we have Optitone. I'm going to introduce Optitone. It's only just been launched to the market. We've had it in play in a number of independent pharmacies for some time, but it's our semi-automated repeat dispensing solution. Yes, I've practiced that. It utilizes barcode scanning to be as efficient and as safe as possible. And the idea is that it streamlines the dispensary workflow to help save your team's time, to give you that time back to spend and connect with patients. That's me, Alliance Healthcare. Stop.
Thank you very much, Ben. I will try and play with that again. That's really refreshing because normally when we have sponsors and we give them 3 minutes, they use 10. So gold star for me to Alliance. Okay, thank you. Next we have Sharak. if you want to come and say a few words for us.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much. So my name is Rambi, I'm from Chirac. Just want to introduce what we do. We do a variety of things. Because I've only got a couple of minutes, I'm going to sort of concentrate on how we can maximise on private services. So we partnered up with ECG to do EPGDs. Traditionally they were paper-based, but we've digitised them. There are a couple of USPs with ours. You don't have to pay anything up front. You can start doing monthly instalments. And also their premises covering. So if you've got pharmacists, technicians, they're all covered under that single PGD. It's fully integrated into our platform, so it allows you to do full digital recording. I'll come back onto the pre-consultation in a couple of minutes because I've got a bit of an interactive demo. With the EPGDs, you also get our booking platform and clinical recording. So actually you can do your NHS services, your commission services, all on that single platform. But the main thing is really try and reduce down the number of people using paper records and to get it all on the cloud. So if you've got a phone with you, do the next screen, I don't know. If you want to scan that QR, one back please. Oh, I think it's just got. So brilliant. Yeah, if you want to scan that QR code, that will take you through to a demo booking platform, and you can look at what the risk assessment forms look like. So you can add pre-risk assessment forms onto your bookings, save a bit of time, and then the pharmacist can validate them. But we do various other things, websites, apps, deliveries. We own Pro Delivery Manager. If you want to book in a demo, we'll distribute these slides later. You just scan that QR code on this page and book in a demo with Chirac, and we'll be happy to show you the extent of the platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, very refreshing to see that sponsors do stick to the rules. The last meeting I went to, Nick was chairing and he went on for 20 minutes, didn't he?
So it shows it's right for the chair to hand over soon, Olivier. It's all good.
So thank you very much. Our last sponsor tonight is Lily. Now, Olivia is going to come and introduce herself. Due to regulatory issues, she can say very little to you on the screen. But for those who are registered, either here tonight or online, you will be able to get further information from Olivia. So over to you.
Yeah, so I'll be even quicker than the others, but exactly as you said, Olivia. My name's Olivia from Lily, and I'm excited to speak to you one-to-one at some point today to share further information about our medication. We have healthcare professional resources that I can share with you, but also patient resources. And my contact information will be kindly shared by Helen to those who have registered today at the NPA. So if you would like to reach out to me, I can also share with you those key resources and information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's that part over. And once again, thank you for the sponsors for being here tonight. In terms of what next, you should be able to see on your screen now that we've also been joined by Jasmine and Ben, both working at the NPA. Jasmine is our go-to for anything to do with pharmacy, I suppose. And Ben, anything to do with the campaign and the activities that you will have seen over the past 12 months. And again, I'm going to bring Gareth on now, but Ben, Nick and Jasmine, if there's anything, if you put your hand up, we'll bring you in. We've started to have a couple of questions on the chat, so thank you very much for that. But before we start answering questions, I'm really keen to hear from Gareth. So Gareth, if you want to come along and keep asking the questions, we're going to summarize them. This is why I've got my phone in my hand, and hopefully I'll do justice at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olivier. So I'm going to run through some slides now to look at really the deal and try to interpret what it means, and actually try to think about where we go as a sector from here. So I want to start off with what really happened last Friday, which was the publication of NHS England's economic analysis. We've been waiting for this for an awful long time. It was commissioned years ago. And in fact, it's the first look at the true cost of running pharmacy services since the COSY report back in 2011. So this report found that the true cost of running community pharmacy services in 23-24 was over 5 billion, and that will increase to over 8 billion by 2029 to 2030. So this report is looking not just at the operating costs, but actually, the cost of capital, the risk associated with being in business. It is the full cost that is required to provide the pharmacy service. The report found that 99% of pharmacies had funding from the NHS, which was lower than the full cost of delivering the service. It found that around half of pharmacy companies may struggle to meet their debts over the coming year. That 47% of pharmacies were not profitable in the last year, as measured by EBITDA, and 78% of pharmacies risk being unsustainable in the short term. And of critical interest to the wider public, there's a significant risk of interruption to NHS pharmaceutical services offered in these pharmacies. So this was a proper piece of work done by independent economists, and really shows the massive gaps that exist between the funding provided by the NHS and the real cost of providing community pharmacy service. I just want to note, actually, at this point, there were 5 independents who worked very hard behind the scenes to support this piece of work, advising Frontier and IQVIA. Actually, one of them is in the room, Gary Myers. So just think, we should all be very grateful to the independents who actually did contribute their expertise to ensure this report demonstrates the genuine cost of running community pharmacy. So then, across to Monday and the offer from NHS England and the Department of Health, covering 2 years, and authorised and approved by West Streeting and Stephen Kinnock, top right-hand corner. So for the last financial year, the one that's just ended, an uplift of 4% was given. Not a huge uplift, but actually, the first one in over a decade. Unfortunately, because of the way the pharmacy contract works, that's deemed to have been earned already from over delivery, which means that there's no additional money coming, even though there's been a 4% uplift. So, very disappointing for everybody that there's no one-off payment coming, which obviously people hoped for. For the year 25-26, the one we're just starting now, the global sum goes up 13.9%, so a more sizable increase in the current financial year. And in respect to the 2 ministers on the screen, it was really only possible for them to, they're only really accountable for the 25-26 uplift. In effect, 24-25 had been agreed before they'd even arrived in office, even though it wasn't revealed to community pharmacy. So on top of that, there's 215 million available for Pharmacy First, and also funding for the hypertension case finding service and the contraception service. So in total, the sum that can be earned through these services is almost 3.3 billion, which is 27% up on 23-24. Also, there's a write-off of excess margin. Now, you never really feel that because it just means that they won't come and take more money out of community pharmacy. So, it's good news in the sense that there's not going to be another hit. But obviously, that's not money that people will actually feel themselves receiving or appear in cash flow. So we've obviously talked a lot, and all healthcare providers have talked a lot about the burden from national insurance, national living wage. There is no special payment to cover that. That's just going to have to be dealt with out of the uplift. And in reality, that knocks out most of the uplift, unfortunately. So the SAF increases as of Tuesday, up 19p, and some of the other service fees are up as well. Margin has gone up from the 800 million figure that's been for a number of years up to 900 million. Pharmacy First thresholds have changed. There's a new threshold at 20 consultations a month where you get half of the £1,000. You get £500 if you get to 20, and then you get the £1,000 when you get to the 30. And just two clinical changes, an expansion of NMS to incorporate mental health, and a new emergency contraception service. So some of these numbers won't be completely visible just because of where the faces are on the screen, but I'll read out the key numbers here. What we're trying to do is just try to understand what the change in staff means. So you've got 8,000 items a month. That means it's worth about £1,500 per month, or £18,000 per year for the increase in staff. And then if we look at the service fee, so I suppose the big one here, the single activity fee up to £1.46. Some modest increases in contraception, Pharmacy First, a reduction in the one of the fees for the hypertension case finding service, the clinical check of BPs down to £10 ABPM, up to 50 as they really try to incentivise greater ABPM testing. There's also a margin element. I mean, that's really one we can't really predict how that falls for people. That's going to be dependent on local circumstances. But there is, the additional margin up £100 million on 2 years ago. So that's a quick outline of the deal. And I suppose the question is, was it a fair deal for community pharmacy? And there are a number of different ways you can answer this question. I mean, if you ask the ministers, they will tell you that actually with the NHS as a whole got an uplift of 5.8% 25-26. The global sum has gone up 14%. And actually have to add on to that the additional funding for Pharmacy First and the cancelled clawback. And that's how you get to the figure that is being quoted of 30%. So yeah, in comparison with the rest of the NHS in this year on its own, it was more than an above average deal, and we've described it as a step forward because it is new money, the first new money for 11 years, but it falls short of what is needed, a long way short of what is needed. And it is a different approach to community pharmacy after all of those years of zero increases. I think we have to recognise that. But there are other ways you can look at this and interpret it. If you look at the entire NHS budget and what proportion community pharmacy gets, so back before the cuts, we were getting 2.5% of the entire NHS budget, and that's what we've been saying. We need to get back to that point. We got down to a low of 1.5% of the budget, and we've now got this up this year to 1.7% of the budget. So again, a long way from where we need to be, but up a bit. When you look at the numbers in the NHS economic analysis and compare that with what we've been offered, obviously there's a huge variance. The headline number for the economic analysis was 5 billion, so that was the number for 23-24. Actually, the number for 25-26 is actually almost 6 billion. With the inflation that was anticipated in the report and obviously the reality of all the additional regulatory costs. So actually in this financial year, according to that report, the running costs of community pharmacy are about 6 billion. Government, if you throw in everything, including the clawback, are providing 3.5 billion. So that's how much of the service they're funding. So effectively 2.5 billion worth of the service that you'll provide is not being funded by the NHS this year. It's been funded by pharmacy. It's been provided as a subsidy from community pharmacy to the NHS. And actually, again, looking back to the economic analysis, in 23-24, actually the shortfall was about 49%, quite similar in 24-25. If you include everything this year, including the written off margin, the shortfall is still around about 42%, or effectively they're giving us 58% of the funding that we need. So as I say, you can take different interpretations about how good a deal it was, and our summary is a step forward, but nowhere near enough. I mean, so the question is, where does community pharmacy go next with the campaign activity? For us, this is all about our 5 tests, which we published a number of months ago. We sent to ministers and we said, this is how we're going to judge your offer. We said we're looking for something that's above inflation and actually making some progress towards meeting the findings of the economic analysis. I mean, technically that has been met. It was an above inflation increase. Our second test was that there would be payment in arrears for 24-25, a lump sum. It's desperately needed. Everybody needs money now, and that's not been provided. So we say on that particular one, it's failed. Our second test, actually, there were 2 parts to it. There was one about no further clawback. So there is a tick against the second part of that one because they have not done a clawback. They could have done, technically they could have done, that would be another 200 million taken out of community pharmacy, and they haven't done that. Our third test was about delivering the funding equitably and transparently. That's both about margin, which is earned variably, works for some people, doesn't work so much for other people, and about pharmacy first, which in many respects is out of our hands. It's down to the NHS PR campaign, which hasn't been a great success. It's down to GPs locally being supportive and referring. So I think the jury's very much out on whether this offer has met that one. We suggested there should be a clear roadmap to reform of the contract, to remove all the problems that are inherent in our contract and sort out the problems with the drug tariff, dispensing at a loss. Again, there have been some warm words here from the minister, but absolutely no firm commitment at that stage. So again, we'd say that probably the jury is out on that one. And then we feel there needs to be a new mechanism for reviewing funding regularly. As I said, it's 14 years since the last cost of service inquiry. We need this to be done every year or 2. And actually, we need that report then to have some weight and not just be written off by ministers because it's too difficult to implement. So again, we've not had much there. Ministers have recognised there's a huge gap, but they haven't committed to closing that gap. Now, it's quite difficult for them to undertake to do that because the comprehensive spending review is due to take place. But that's what we need to give people confidence. So over the last year, we've done a lot of campaigning activity. We've managed to get community pharmacy to be more visible. And that's certainly been helpful in trying to get a higher number out of government. We've gone to Westminster, gone to Downing Street, lots of activity in the media, and days of action, which lots of NPA members have taken part in. So we've had more than 640 national media mentions since the start of the year. So we have seen a massive increase in the visibility of community pharmacy, and that's been very helpful. And even in recent weeks, when a few weeks ago we announced that if the deal did come through by 1st of April, we were going to ask members to actually initiate action. So more coverage of that too. So 2,000 media mentions during 24, 650 this year so far. So we've been higher profile than ever before. The NPA, we've done a lot of that, generated a lot of that coverage, certainly more than other pharmacy bodies. But we now need to think about the year ahead and beyond. What is going to happen next? Despite the fact that we haven't got enough in this contract deal, it's highly unlikely that more money will follow in the coming months. In reality, the 25-26 deal is done now. There is a comprehensive spending review coming up, which will look at government spending across all departments. We've made submissions to that. We know the Department of Health has submitted the economic analysis to try to get as much money out of the Treasury in this comprehensive spending review, so that in the next year's round of negotiations, there will be more money available to community pharmacy. The new government is currently developing its 10-year plan. It's critical that we get community pharmacy recognised in that. We need to be seen to be the solution to even more of the NHS's problems. So they want to commission more services, and that's the money will follow those services. So we've done a lot of campaigning activities last year, but there's an awful lot more work to be done to increase the likelihood that in next year and the year after, much more progress is made on bridging that gap. So yeah, the question at the moment is: do we go ahead and take the action that we've been talking about, or do we think for that particular action, now's not the right time? It's quite difficult to sustain campaigning on the same message. If you look at the way the BMA work, they don't have one campaign that goes on for a long time. They have ups and downs. So we need to think strategically about the best way to play the next year to maximise the opportunities for the next round of funding for community pharmacy. We at the NPA, and it's Ben's area, and he'd be very happy to answer questions on it, but a lot of the media activity we do, it's not just about pharmacy funding. It's about maintaining a really high profile for community pharmacy by picking up issues that the media will find interesting. Supply shortages, for example, or health inequalities or health deprived areas. So in our planning, we're looking to maintain a lot of focus on these areas, as well as the funding issues. So that's a bit of a summary of where we've got to. I might just ask Ben if he wants to say a few words before we go to questions, just to build on the questions about where we go next with campaign activity.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth, and happy to do. And I see what some people have been saying in the chat. I mean, I think it's a very difficult situation that we've been in, and one of the things we always want to do is thank, our amazing members for all the support you've given us with our campaign over the last few months. We couldn't really have done it without you. I think it's clear that we've given, as Gareth said, we've given the crisis in pharmacy funding and the importance of the pharmacy network a greater profile than we've probably ever had before through this work. And it's pretty clear that it's shifted the dial in terms of the political salience of the issue, and the national conversation that has led to getting what the government would say would be the largest settlement in the NHS. Now, obviously, I see people in the chat saying, that the tone's not strong enough, and I think we all sympathise with that. I think we are determined to keep on pressing ahead and keep on pressing the case for community pharmacies. I guess the question for us is really how we do that to greatest effect, and how we open the doors to government and push the buttons that will work with government in order to get everybody a better deal. And there's a number of ways we can do that. And we're going to examine every possible avenue to raise this. Now, we'll look at it. This is one for the NPA board, see what the most effective way of doing it is. But what we're really focusing on is what is going to get everybody a result in either now or later or both. And so, there is no way in which we're stepping back from our efforts to raise the profile of the pharmacy sector, or raise the issues that are affecting everybody, or pressing with government the need for better funding, reform of the contract, and a better deal. I guess what we're thinking about is just what tactics are going to be most effective. and it's really useful to hear people's feedback and really useful to hear people's ideas. And if we don't get through everything on this call today, we'll share some email addresses at the end where you can get in touch, and we're always happy to talk in person or by email about ideas and thoughts that people have got.
Thank you, Ben. That's helpful. So I've got some questions here, but before we go, the microphone is going, so I do apologise for this. I just wondered whether there was any questions in the room. Has anybody got any questions they want to ask? Okay, I'll give you the microphone. The camera should follow you. Speak in the microphone, but it's going, so you can say your name as well.
My name's Tas. So my question really is, NPA was focused on these 5 tests. The reality is that most of those tests have failed. So do we have the moral backbone to continue with our action or not? A very clear question. So we either need to say, yes, we're going to continue and we're going to do something, or we're going to play politics with Wes and try and get back into his good books, which is it?
Gareth, you want to talk to that? I can have a go, but you've got the strategy board.
Yeah, well, ultimately that's a question for the NPA board, which they're going to determine next week. So part of the point of having discussion this evening is to hear from views from members, and we're through other means we're asking for member views at the moment. It's about ensuring we can get the best result in the long term. So it's a judgment really about the best strategy. I think we're very clear. The economic analysis is a sort of once in a generation opportunity to reset the dial. It's a question of the right strategy to influence Wes and Stephen, and through them the Treasury, to get the best long-term outcome.
Thank you. And the other thing I would say, if I may, to this question is there are going to be steps in the next 12 months, the spending review, and then the next lot of negotiation. As you know, the deal that has been presented is effectively a 12-month deal. It's going until 2026, so the negotiation needs to restart quickly, and that will form part of the action that the NPA takes. Thank you. Before I give a question in the room, I'm going to take a question from someone online. So if you just let me flick my screen. So a question from Ola. Can we clarify the changes on DSP? Seems like an own goal. Jasmine, I don't know if you are able to come on the screen and talk a little bit about the changes to DSPs.
Hi, Olivia. Yes, thank you. So what we know at the moment is that DSP's regulations will be changed so that DSPs will no longer be able to provide advanced services and enhanced services to patients on the DSP pharmacy premises. Currently, DSPs are prohibited from doing that just for essential services, but once the regulations change, it will apply to all the other services. And I think what we need to wait for is the detail of it, exactly how the regulations are amended and the wording of it. What we do expect, however, is that where the service specifications already permit contractors to provide any services off-site, then DSPs will be able to do that. So I'm thinking, for example, something like the vaccination services there, etc. So at the moment, it's just the intention to change the regs have been announced. We don't know the exact wording of it yet, which will then allow us to see what it exactly means on a day-to-day basis, Olivia. Thanks.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Nick,
you had your hand up.
So yeah, thank you, Olivier. So I think I just wanted to come back to the question about the action and the backbone and all that kind of stuff briefly. So I mean, I think there's a couple of things which are really important to say out loud. The NPA had no advanced knowledge of what the deal was going to be. I actually found out with Gareth on Sunday evening, the same time as the trade press. I think what we're doing here is actually gauging people's members' views. You know, as the chair of the NPA, it's an absolute privilege, but, you know, I'm the one that gets the letters addressed to me when we know we've upset, you know, the Secretary of State. And, you know, I've had those letters. I can share that amongst people. I don't think we're in any mood to stop pressing this button. I think I want to reassure people about that. Like I say, we've already reconvened the NPA board virtually this week, again next week, to decide after judging our members' views what's the best way forward. But I don't want people to be left with the impression that we are not up for the fight, that we're not prepared to keep batting, that we're not in that place. But it is about getting the most effective way of getting the money into our pockets to make our businesses sustainable for the short and then longer term. It's something that, you know, I personally, and the whole NPA board and the executive team and everybody that supports you, absolutely is focused on, of getting the right outcome. And again, I think I want to say out loud how exceptionally proud I am of all our members and of the executive team and the board of the way in which we've raised the profile and moved the dial over the last 12 months. But our measured response is because of the way in which we are both gathering your feedback and assessing the detail in front of us. And I think that was just important to say, Olivier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for that. We have a question in a room. If you want to introduce yourself and then ask the question.
My name is Gaurang Patel, and I'm from Theo Pharmacy. And I'd like to just express total disappointment in what is being offered. It's a bit like a patient that's critically ill and is being offered a glass of water without any medication. And it's been going on for not 1 year, not 2 years. It's been going on for a very long time, and the sector is in a critical state. Now, the issue here is what doesn't come through is a quality of pharmaceutical services being offered in the whole country, with a contracting supply chain where pharmacists are under a lot of pressure with their staff and underfunded. How are they expected to deliver quality pharmaceutical services? Secondly, we're being asked to give additional services as Hancock has said, we're an afterthought for the NHS. Well, that's just not on. And finally, we have the mega quango, the NHS, which failed. And we know that 10,000 jobs have to be lost. The point here is that the pharmacies knew the NHS quango was failing a long time ago. The fact that the government, and particularly the various departments, didn't know about it, that wasn't the pharmacist's fault. By the way, the pharmacists stayed open through the pandemic. That seems to be missed to Mr. Streeting and Mr. Kinnock. And I think that a really strong position has to be taken, because it's not because of the pharmacy that this has to be taken. It's for the people, it's the general public. And we are being asked to provide substandard pharmaceutical services over and over again with empty promises. So I'm sorry, it's not a question, but that's our position.
Thank you. And I was going to say, I wasn't sure how I was going to answer your question because it wasn't one, but I think the sentiment is probably felt in the room as well as out there. The next question, I think, online, there's a few questions about actions, which I'm not going to take because Ben's already answered what is happening. You've heard the NPA board will meet next week, and after we've gathered feedback. So we'll not answer this question there, and there will be some information coming out next week. There's a question here from Subhash Patel. What's the point of the independent economic review if it wasn't accounted for? And I assume that's in the context of this particular deal. That's an excellent question. Why was it not published earlier as well? Gareth, I don't know if you want to say a couple of words about that. I'm happy to answer that as well. I suppose I'll start and say that. So in terms of other cameras coming back, in terms of the context of independent economic review, I mean, clearly the government or the previous government and the NHS, when they offered the 5-year deal that we all know too well about, made a promise of commissioning this independent economic review. Clearly they saw what was in it. The gap was probably simply too big to bridge in one lump. But as you saw in the NPA 5 test, we can't accept that as an answer. And we've got to think that ultimately, if we don't have a pathway, a clear pathway of working with this new government towards that number or towards the number in the economic review in a few years' time, then clearly, we will have to act accordingly. If that's perhaps more of a question for the department and it's perhaps a question for the politician, but I suspect the independent economic review surprised a few people, and the number was simply too big on this particular instance. That's not an excuse, that's just a statement of fact. Perhaps if Gareth, you have anything you want to add on that?
Well, I mean, only that actually, because we are so far off, the only way to seriously close the gap is a correction. If what we get over the coming years is just a slightly above inflation increase, in fact, what will happen is the gap will get bigger. So that's the argument, and it's a difficult one for Treasury to accept, but that's the argument we have to make. But to be successful, we're going to have to do more services. They won't bridge that gap for the core service. But if we can deliver services that they need, then there's a strong incentive for them to find a way to close that gap.
Maybe we could propose that they cost share. Let the public take some responsibility. At the moment, the public is kept in the blindfold. They don't know. They don't understand all these funding gaps. But if they're being told that you guys may have to pay for your medicines, then let's revise their expectations. Well, you can't go on.
We'll take this out of the room because I want to move on. We're fortunate enough, as Gareth said at the beginning, to have Gary Myers, who was one of the independents that worked on the independent economic review. He's put his hand up in the room, so I'm going to let him come in, if that's okay. But Gary, a short, succinct answer, so we're not here all evening.
Part of the problem is the contract itself. The economic review, the critical information about the economic review is the projection and the liquidity problem.
Correct.
The projection is based on a 17% rise in prescription volume to 2030, right? Which means we'll be doing over 1.3 billion items by that stage, right? And at the same time, we've got a fixed funding envelope. And that therefore means that this is a funding cut. The difference between the pharmacy contract and the GP contract is more money means more work. The GP contract doesn't work that way. And therein lies your problem. If we are going to survive, we need a radical overhaul of the contract itself. And so the most important part of the review is the way that funding tracks going forwards. No government is going to pay 8 billion to dispense prescriptions. And at the same time, we've got the widespread introduction of independent prescribing across all of pharmacy. So I raised that question. Obviously, it's something that needs to be thought through. So it's not just about where we are now, it's where we're going to be as part and parcel of the 10-year plan.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Very helpful. We'll let the camera come back in this direction. Thank you. Here we go. I've also had a question online, I suppose, around what is the net increase for an average pharmacy with this new contract? And I suppose it is very difficult to answer that question precisely because it is impossible to know who gets what of the margin element. So you don't even know what's going to happen to drug prices next month, let alone in a year's time. And as a result, I think being conservative, the SAF and I suppose the increase in service fees for the conception and pharmacy first and that sort of consultation are the only tangible increase that we can see. And Gareth did put on his presentation that for an 8,000 item pharmacy, that represented about £22,000 for the SAF. And then you can hopefully work out from the consultation that you offer what this might look like for you. But beyond that, it is really difficult to put a number on it because we don't know. I'm a contractor like you. I have 4 pharmacies, and all 4 pharmacies are subject to various branded generic deals. It is impossible to say who gets what, and as a result, not something that we can say. Perhaps a question for the executive team at CPE. Is there any more question in the room? I have a couple more questions online.
Got one question.
Okay.
about the clawback. You said there's no further clawback, but I thought I read in the documents or in the announcement. Sorry, I thought I read in the announcement that there's another 40 million pending clawback that's going to be taken from us. So 193 plus the 40. So we have got more clawback to come here.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's our understanding. So it's cleared a lot of the overall margin, but there is still some more that's
So still
already
brace
there.
ourselves.
Yeah, it's a one-off clawback. It's a one-off waiving the clawback anyway. So you know, under the current contract, it's always going to happen, unfortunately.
It's 40 million. It's been recouped over the next 12 months.
Correct. So just for those who, in case you haven't heard, I don't know how well this is going onto the computer. There's a question about the 40 million additional clawback that we are likely to see, which will be spread over the next 12 months. That is because the government committed to writing off a certain amount of clawback, but their calculation, surprise, I would say, have worked out that we have over-delivered on that, and therefore some of that will be clawed back by them. That was the same question. There is a question here which I've been leaving until now. Ben, you have something to say, and then I will answer that question.
Yes, Olivier, I was going to say thank you to everybody online who's putting their questions and thoughts in the chat, which are really excellent, and lots of strong points being made. Quite hard to keep up with them. There are lots of questions about CPE, and lots of questions about how the government has presented this and the way forward. There's a specific question out there which I thought I would draw colleagues' attention to. Several people have asked about what the deal says about lowering your hours, whether you've got core hours or whether you're a 100-hour pharmacy. So that might be worth addressing as a specific.
Perhaps one for Jasmine to answer. Jasmine, can you share some insight on that?
Yes, Olivia, thanks. I'll just summarize it quickly because we do have information on the website. The questions are coming in terms of reducing the actual core hours. But just for clarity, the actual number of core hours cannot be reduced even once the regulations have been amended. The flexibility that is being introduced is to amend the days and time at which the pharmacy is open to deliver those core hours. So that's going to be an important distinction. For 100-hour pharmacies, there is already an existing mechanism to reduce the hours to 72 hours a week if the contractor wants to do that, and there is provision for that already. But at the moment, my understanding is that those 72 hours cannot be further reduced under the current provisions in any shape or form. So it's about how the core hours can be amended so it allows you to be more flexible what time of the day, etc., the pharmacy is open to deliver those hours, Olivia. I hope that helps. And if members want to contact us, we can certainly talk them through individually what they need.
Thank you, Jasmine. Unfortunately, they haven't found a new battery for the microphone, so you're stuck with a half-working microphone for the rest of the evening. Apologies for that. One of the questions that was asked, which we haven't answered, is the way the NPA voting would come. And I'll answer that if I may. So for those who don't know, I am one of the NPA nominee on CPE. And when it came to voting for the deal, the vote was effectively a secret vote. It was online, behind a wall, and we were asked to choose yes or no, basically. We don't know the result of the vote. We don't know who voted for what. This hasn't been shared with us. What I do know is how I voted, and I will tell you how I voted. And when it came to voting, I looked at the NPA 5 test, and I looked at whether they were met. And as Gareth explained, they were not met, and I came to the same conclusion. Independent economic analysis or not, my view was that this was not going to stop pharmacy closures. It was not going to put money in contractors' pocket to pay for the increased cost in April. It wasn't going to help people pay their wholesaler bills. And as a result, I voted against the deal. That said, the deal was still approved, I would say. It's being implemented, as you know. You would have to ask other people on the committee how they voted, but be reassured that as your NPA representative on CPE, I voted against the deal.
No, one more question.
Is it a question?
Yeah. What's to ask Gary? Was there any consideration of medicines inflation in the study? Because, as we all know, Mr. Trump's decided to slap on tariffs, and it's going to make a very dangerous and unstable world. Was there any consideration for underlying medicines inflation? Because that bites a lot of the contractors straight away, the way the structure of the contract. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't usually do mics, so you'll have to excuse me. The economic analysis was based purely on operating cost. So, in as much as drug inflation is concerned, there was no direct analysis of procurement cost and pharmacy margin taken into consideration, right? The way that the costs were arrived at was based on current accounting costs per pharmacy accounts, using the bottom-up analysis, and then the projection going forwards was based on an assessment of the way that prescription volume was going to rise and the way that our individual operating costs, fixed costs, variable costs, were all going to rise, and the way that capital, working capital, was going to have to rise as well. Okay, and that was all taken into consideration. I have to tell you that we had a lot of arguments with NHS England about the mechanisms, the precise mechanisms for the data that we were going to survey, because they came into this with a fixed idea on things they wanted to include and the things they wanted to exclude. Originally, for example, they wanted to exclude the capital costs of pharmacy goodwill. And we spent weeks arguing the toss with them over that, and eventually they caved into pressure. And there were several arguments that took place behind closed doors where myself and my 5 colleagues basically argued with the department and with NHS England officials and made the case directly to Frontier Economics, and largely they bought everything we said to them. But with regards to the way that drug inflation operates, that will directly affect liquidity, but it is something that's going to have to be taken into account, which is why we were quite keen to include a current assets analysis, which is the way that Frontier Economics deduced the liquidity crisis that we're now facing. So you're right, as drug costs continue to rise, the liquidity problem could become even more acute.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll let the folks that have joined us online go back to their evening. You're stuck with us for a little bit longer here. There is a question about What are we doing to hold CPE to account? And I guess this is the role of the board, and this is the conversation that we are going to have on your behalf. The feedback this evening is invaluable. There's going to be more feedback session organized, and you, our members, will lead us towards the right path. Ultimately, I have been on CPE for a couple of years. It's fascinating what happens there. It is not an easy job. All I can tell you is the people that are on there, especially the independent, they all work in a pharmacy for you, like you. They all feel the pain like you. They're all subject to regional variances. And as a result, we all need together. The NPA has worked really well with the regional reps. You will have seen that there's been some messages with IPA that have come out, NPA and IPA working together. That unity is important for the sector, and I do hope that we can continue working together so that the next deal, regardless of what we got this time, the next deal is also a meaningful one, a long-term one, and something that will take us towards the number in the IER. Thank you very much. I don't think there are any other questions. Ben, you're the man with the buzzer, so unless you have seen anything else.
Olivier, there's a lot of discussion on the chat about the way forward, which is extremely helpful. Lots of people expressing strong views, which are again extremely helpful. I think these are all things we'll take away. There's a loud message there, and obviously we've been pressing this very hard over the last few months, and you know, we're going to go away and see what the most effective way forward is.
Thank you, Ben. And unfortunately, here in the room, we're not seeing the chat, so we are not privy to those conversations. But if you're capturing them, then hopefully we can. It can form part of the discussion. I think that's it. Thank you very much, Nick, Ben, and Jasmine. Are you staying with us, or are you also going? You're going. In that case, have a pleasant evening. For those on the screen, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for the conversation, and we'll see you all very soon at the next event. Keep an eye on the WhatsApp and your emails as to when and where these are. Thank you very much, and good night.